Hi, I'm Christine Cushing. Welcome to the Quarantine Kitchen, where we make fun, feel-good recipes that connect us all. Today, I know what's happening out there. We're all on a sugar rush. I know you want something sweet. You've been asking for something sweet, so we're going somewhere to a family treasured recipe making my Aunt Sophie's baklava. Πάμε. Okay, step one. We're going to start with the way I want you to make this, and then there's so much for me to share about this recipe. So first thing is going to be the syrup, and here is really 1 part water to 2 parts sugar, which I'm just going to put into a pot. Very simple. And for this particular syrup, there is some ground cinnamon. I'm actually not adjusting the recipe at all. This is the way the recipe was taught to me, and I'm going to keep it exactly as it was. Very tough for me to do, but I want to share it with you in its original form. This is going to go on the stovetop just to simmer. So we have that in cinnamon, water, and sugar. Now the reason that I do that first is because I want that syrup to be cooked down to a certain consistency and cool by the time the baklava is cooked. So that's doing well. Next, what are we going to fill Aunt Sophie's baklava with? So this baklava is originally made with walnuts. Look how beautiful those are. And I got a suggestion, so I'll put those into the food processor. Whole walnuts. I like to use and buy whole walnuts because I can ensure the quality. If you buy pieces, they could be a bit suspect. So I always go with whole walnuts, then I can control what's happening. They're going to go into the food processor. And to that, I'm going to add some sugar, just a little bit, and some cinnamon. The sugar in here is super important because it's going to prevent these nuts from caking or becoming really stiff, so it just breaks it up a little bit. The cinnamon is going to add a little cinnamoniness, which is good. And now I'm going to pulse because the texture of the walnuts is super important. I want to just check what they look like now. Can you see me with the cloud of cinnamon? Oh, I think that that's absolutely perfect. I think that was right on the money. So what I'm looking for here is coarsely chopped, but not too coarse, but not too fine. You know, it's typical, like the Greek grandma or aunt recipe, until it's done, until it's ready, until it has enough. That's always the line. So let me just show you that. Texture of those walnuts, super important. And when I add them, you'll see what I mean and why this is super important. Okay, a little bit of mess, but that's all good. Already, I can start to smell Sophie's baklava. So I got a request, which I thought was super amazing, so I'm actually going to do it. For one of the viewers said, why don't you teach us a Greek word of the day every time you make a Greek recipe? So I thought today would be a good time to start. The Greek word of today is karidi. Karidi means walnut. So walnut baklava, karidi. Practice with me. Karidi. Okay, let's move on. So we got our karidia chopped and ready to go. Next thing, lemon. We're going to need a little bit of lemon in the syrup, but that's going to be later. Now, it's time to talk phyllo and baking pan, or the pan that I'm using. This is one of those old school tin that's covered in enamel baking dishes that I absolutely love and that we always use for this baklava. So that's where we're going with it. Okay, so step one in preparing the phyllo, I already started. What I like to do is clarify my butter. So by clarifying the butter, you see these milk solids? I actually just cook it down for about 15 or 20 minutes over gentle heat, and then you can skim off this on the top, and then you have essentially clarified butter. And that makes for the best technique to actually brush your phyllo because you don't have that wetness that's going to make it soggy. So we have clarified butter. I've got my pan. The secret to this baklava is to actually follow the pattern of the pan. So whatever size pan you have, you're going to cut the phyllo to match that size exactly. There's not going to be any ends to tuck in, none of that. So drizzling a little bit of butter in the bottom, actually a fair bit, just so it doesn't stick. And then working with 2 sheets at a time, I'm just going to lay those right in the bottom. Okay, then again, drizzling with a little bit more butter, not being super precise, but just 2 at a time and making sure I'm sprinkling a fair bit of butter 2 at a time. Now, I've had many adventures with baklava over the course of my lifetime. And I'm going to invite you to actually go and have a look at one of the most amazing videos, I think, on my channel. That is the baklava from Istanbul, where we got to actually go to this incredible factory behind the scenes. I mean, that thing is crazy. That one was more of a behind the scenes, watching masters make baklava and making the phyllo by hand. This one is how you can make it at home, because at any family gathering, it's crazy. When Sophie makes the baklava, which is usually Easter, Christmas, you know, holidays, special occasions like that, she will bring it to whichever house we're having it. And essentially, my husband will, as soon as she comes to the door, he's going to ask, do you have it? Did you bring it? Is it here? Is Sophie here? Did she come? That's usually the setup. So basically, we're dividing a package of phyllo, so 8 sheets on the bottom, 8 sheets on top, equal. Now, the pieces that I cut to match so that this tray would be perfectly even sized, I have some leftover pieces. Those are the ones that I'm putting in the center where you're not going to really see them. And that way you're not going to have those bulky pieces. You know, when people kind of fold it over, and that drives me crazy, the kind of folding over of the phyllo. So now I have half of my phyllo sheets down. Now I have this beautiful nut mixture, and it's only going to go down in 1 layer in the center. That's it. So I want to make sure I cover every corner with this evenly. Now the excitement builds. So now the last couple of layers, again going in double layers with just little drops of butter between, for a very important reason. Okay, I just want to show you now what's happening with the syrup, because I want to cool that down. So the syrup is here. It's no longer boiling. And just as it comes off the heat, I want to show you the texture that we're looking for. It sort of definitely has a bit of a tackiness. You see that? Just like forms a little bit of a bubble. And at that point, I'm going to add just a teaspoon of lemon juice to it and cool it fully. Swirl that around. Oh, yes. Now, one last thing that is absolutely imperative, I mean, this is a deal breaker for this baklava, is the cutting of it completely before I add the rest of the butter. Yes, all of that butter is going to go on here. So what shall we make? Diamonds or squares? That's the question. I'm going to go with diamonds, I think. So I want to just, again, not to be too fussy, but I'm going to go in with going just kind of with my eye. And I'm going to start cutting. I think those look like good sizes. And you want to make sure that you cut right to the bottom. I don't like to scrape the pan, but you do need to go right to the bottom, making sure that they are a similar size. Before this baklava goes into the oven, one last thing has to happen. All of this butter has to go into this pan. So you see how I just used a little bit between the layers? Now is where it gets good. It's all gonna be just poured right in. So it gets all in the nooks and in the crannies. Oh yeah. You thought you were scot-free. Not a chance. Not a single chance. So here I just want to make sure that I'm all evened out, that they're all smothered. I mean, you can see this, right? It's just covered in butter. This is, by the way, the same way they made it in Istanbul, just loads and loads and loads of butter. Now let me show you why we clarify the butter. Let's show you what happens here. You see in the bottom here, these are the milk solids, which didn't cook down. But that's what I want to leave out of there because it's going to make my phyllo soggy. So you want to make sure you don't use that at all. Who's ready for this to go into the oven? Okay, so 350 is my temperature. I'm going to put it sort of in the lower third of the oven, 350 on a Fahrenheit setting, roughly 30 minutes. Okay, are you ready? Close your eyes. And now you can open them. Oh, do you see what I'm talking about here? Do you see it? Who needs to take a deep breath? Is it just me? Oh my goodness. All right, so some technical information. Super hot out of the oven. My syrup is now completely cooled. I added the lemon juice, it's completely cooled. Now this has to go and imbibe all of this while it's super hot so it'll absorb it, okay? I seriously need oxygen at this point. Do you hear that sizzling that's happening? That is the hot baklava absorbing that cooled syrup and just getting into every corner of it. Now I have to tell you the real secret of this recipe. So before it was my Aunt Sophie, it was her mom, Rodo. And she was the first person I tasted it from. So unfortunately, she has passed away, but I got the privilege of actually having to make it with her in her kitchen and Sophie. It is a thing of beauty, and that's why recipes need to be passed down. So this now has to sit for an excruciating hour before we can taste it. But be sure it's gonna be epic. Okay, I did an hour ride on my bike in preparation for the tasting. Who remembers the Greek word of the day? Do you remember? Karidi, walnut. Look at this, baby. All right. This is what we all came for. Okay. Generally, these are served out of the pan like this, and everybody helps themselves. That's a problem, because certain people help themselves way too much. But look at how stunning those look. And you'll see that it's not swimming in syrup. It's just enough for it to be moist, but it's going to be super crunchy and just perfection. I said I'm only going to have one square, rhombus, whatever this is. That's my piece. Don't touch it. I'm saving it for later. Did you see the crunch? So that's the thing about this baklava. It's crispy, but it has enough moisture in it. If you want it a little bit more wet, you cook it a little bit less and you let the syrup go a little bit less also to be more moist. But this for me is perfection. Thanks for joining me for another offering from the Quarantine Kitchen. I hope everything's good with you. I hope that you enjoyed this amazing family recipe, the baklava, which you are gonna love. Please give me a thumbs up, share, let me know what's happening in your kitchen. I'm open for requests, suggestions, challenges. Are these rectangles, rhomboids, or squares? I need to know, or diamonds. See you next time in the Quarantine Kitchen. Bye.